Nottingham Forest are in the Premier League relegation zone after being deducted 4 points for breaching profit and sustainability rules. An independent commission found Forest losses to 2022-23 breached the threshold of £61 million by £34.5 million. Well, let's get some more reaction now with former Forest defender Michael Dawson, who joins me live now. Michael, good to speak to you. First of all, what did you make of yesterday's ruling?
Good afternoon, Joe. Yeah, I mean, it's been coming. It's been hanging over Nottingham Forest now for quite a while. And the 4-point deduction is something that they have to accept. Whether they're going to appeal, only time will tell. We've seen what happened with Everton, so it would make you think that they will. I mean, now they can move on as a group of players and staff. They know what they've got to do. That's been something that they haven't been able to affect. Something that they can affect is how they perform on the pitch and try and pick up as many points to get themselves out of trouble now.
Yeah, and I mean, Forest, they were working to harsher spending restrictions in that 3-year period to the end of last season due to spending 2 of those years in the Championship, arguing that they had to spend more to be competitive. Do you understand their stance and where they're coming from with that?
I certainly do, and I think it's getting harder for Championship teams that are getting promoted to the Premier League. We've seen the gulf in that, and one thing Marinakis tried was to try and make Nottingham Forest competitive. They had an awful lot of players on loan. When Steve Cooper went in, they were in a relegation battle in the Championship. No one expected them to get promoted, so there's a lot of players went out the door, but an awful lot of players came in, and they spent a lot of money, and that was the ruling that was there. They knew what could be the outcome if they broke that, and they have. But I think it's hard for teams that get promoted. I mean, you just look up the road at Newcastle. They've got all the money in the world, but they can't spend it. So these rules are there, and if you break them, you get punished. And unfortunately for Forest, they've got 4 points, and I think they probably would take that. I do see them appealing. I really do. It's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you? What have they got to lose? But it's down to the players now to get that football club out of trouble, because after 23 years, what the fans want is a team competitive and being able to stay in the Premier League. And that was what Mr. Marinakis thought. He thought we have to build, we have to spend money, but they brought an awful lot of players in, and it's backfired on them, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of players, because they would have stayed within the rules had they sold Brennan Johnson earlier last summer. They held on to get some more money from him later in the window. Do you think that was a risk worth taking?
Well, it was a risk, and it's backfired, unfortunately, for Nottingham Forest, because if they had sold him, they would have been in that financial where they had to be. So they haven't got the crystal ball. They knew what the outcome might have been. I just think it's a little bit unfair, unfortunately for them. They got another, I think they were offered maybe 30 million. I'm not too sure of the figures exactly, but they've gone 34.5 million over. So if he goes, they are then inside that. So I can understand why they are putting their point across, and it's hard for them. But what Nuno has to do now, he knows they're there, and they have to start winning football matches, which they haven't been doing of late. I do believe they've got enough to stay in the Premier League, but this is a challenge now with 4 points taken off them.
Yeah, they do have to start winning. They're now in the bottom 3. As you said, they're a point behind Luton in 17th. I mean, how big a blow was that late Luton equaliser in their match on Saturday?
Oh, it was huge. I mean, going into this game on the back of what Luton had been 3-0 up against Bournemouth and then losing 4-3. So that's how Forest will feel now, losing and having opportunities to win the game at Luton. But this is a regular theme. They give goals away from set pieces. They haven't been good enough defensively in those areas. I mean, I think they've got enough going forward in the attacking areas. I'm a huge fan of Morgibbs. Right, you look, Origi's come in and played. Wood gets a goal. Alanga, Callum Hudson-Odoi. But defensively, it's always been Murillo. And Nuno Espirito Santo has been chopping and changing that other centre-back. I think he's had 4 centre-halves, so he's had to play with differently, Murillo. So that's hard. Consistency is what you need. But when you've got an awful lot of players knocking on your door want to play, it's hard to find that.
Yeah, Michael, you've already said that you do think that they've got enough in terms of survival. We're going to have a look at Forest's last 9 games now. When you look at the fixtures ahead of them, does that change your mind in any way in terms of their chances of survival?
No, it doesn't, Joe. I mean, before Saturday, they had the bottom three to play. I mean, that Burnley game away from home is huge. But I think what they've got to look at now, Nottingham Forest fans, who I know very, very well, I've got a lot of friends who are Forest fans, so they will be looking now. We've got the points deduction. We can't affect that. Time will only tell if they do appeal. Crystal Palace, when we come back after the international duty, the City ground will be absolutely rocking because those fans last year arguably kept them in the Premier League because that's where they got all the points from. And then Fulham at home as well. And then you go Tottenham away, tough, Wolves home, and Everton another team. Who knows what will happen with them? Man City at home. I mean, Sheffield United and Burnley are two games now that are must-wins because they are a point behind Luton.
Yeah, must-wins, Michael, but Everton, Sheffield United and Burnley all away from home. What do you make of that? What difference will that make?
Well, their away form since they've been in the Premier League hasn't been good. Last year it was absolutely terrible. But this time of the year it comes to who holds the nerve, who can perform. And I've said, Joe, I believe they've got enough in that dressing room to win. I'm surprised they are in this position. I know even before the 4 points deduction, they were in a relegation battle. But sometimes you can chop and change. You have a big squad to deal with. I think there's only Ryan Yates who's left in that squad. Never mind team from the promotion team that they got promoted 18 months ago. So there's been an awful lot of change at Nottingham Forest, but I still think they've got enough to stay in the Premier League.
And if they do appeal against this punishment, it should be heard and dealt with by April. Everton's case might not be dealt with until a few days after the end of the season. So it really is going to impact this relegation battle. And is it almost a bit of a shame for the fans as well that it is having such an impact on that battle at the bottom?
100%, Joe. I mean, you look at Burnley getting that win against Brentford, and that was huge for them. And the teams that that were out of it, Sheffield United, Burnley, now because this has happened to Forest and they've had the deduction, will Everton, it now gives them a little bit of hope. That there wasn't a lot of hope in my opinion because you hadn't won enough football matches. But even Luton after that devastating loss to Bournemouth, it gives them a big belief. I do. It's an absolute bonus for those teams, and then they can try and drive on that and get as many points to keep them in the league. But I mean, it's going to go right to the wire. I do believe it's going to go to the Burnley game at both ends of the Premier League. It's exciting. It's just hard for fans that it might not be decided because the appeal, if Everton are done, would be maybe after the final deadline day game, which isn't ideal.